rituals. They shaved all the hair off their bodies, eyebrows, everything. They smeared them in 3 different types of mud, literally. They had this whole system of steps to purify them based on traditional religious beliefs. What's very interesting about southern Tanzania, in this place where they don't tend to kill the witches, is these women tend to stay at this camp for a few months during this hungry season, and then they're allowed back home after the harvest. And typically the household that gets back their cleansed witch pays the traditional healer. So one view of that transaction is these traditional healers are lending money to these desperate households. They're paying for the food and room and board of these witches during the hungry season until the harvest. And then after the harvest, they get paid back. Maya Green doesn't give it that interpretation. She's not coming from this economic point of view directly. But if you read her book, it just strikes you that that could be what's going on. It's like think of it as a financial transaction insurance, basically, for these households. So that's another solution. It doesn't need to lead to this. If there were some more organized system to help take care of these witches during desperate periods, then they could come back home later. Yeah. I'm sure, but in general, traditional healers love for everybody to believe in witchcraft, because that's where they get their business in general, not just with the cleansing of witches. They want everybody to believe in witchcraft, so when something bad happens, you go to the traditional healer to help you. And some people pay tons of money to traditional healers to deal with their marital problems, crop problems, passing an exam, everything. So people sometimes spend a lot on these traditional healers, in general, even beyond that case. There's a perverse incentive in general. I mean, it's no different than maybe any medical provider in some sense. We think we've contained those negative incentives through our medical system, but the medical system doesn't necessarily have an incentive to cure health problems, and they don't have customers, right? That's a well-known kind of point in health economics too. You're making exactly that point. Is your hand up? You're just stretching. Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah, this all relies on the traditional healers, I suppose, having some sort of non-agricultural income source. So as long as the traditional healers are pretty well off, which many of them are, and they're not dependent on the local crop cycle too much, then they can kind of serve as this financial institution to some extent. But that's right. Without that, they'd be by the same shock. They wouldn't be able to provide this service. Traditional healers are very interesting people if you ever do field work in East Africa. Very charismatic people, which they have to be, because they have to get people to believe all this stuff. But some of the most just dynamic, charismatic people you'll find in East Africa are traditional healers. Also kind of scary. They'll look at you a certain way, and you're like, okay, interview over, got to go crunch data. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know all the details of that. I think after the harvest, at least the household will have some income. And with some traditional healers in general, and just ties back into this broader role, because they are pretty well off, they can put people on payment plans. You're a little short now, but you're desperate. Yeah, you're desperate. I'm going to help you. I'm going to kill this chicken. I'm going to say this prayer. I'm going to do whatever, but you're going to owe me. And you don't want to mess with that person. Because if you don't pay them back, it's not like the bank being like, well, we're going to go to court or whatever. The traditional healer's like, you haven't paid me back, but I see you have money. That was a big mistake for you. So you pay the traditional healer back. Okay. So, I think that the punchline of the paper is this idea that income shocks are an important part of the story. That if we want to understand this violence, it's not saying income shocks are the only thing going on, but they're playing a major role. You see an outbreak of these killings in periods of very few resources, in periods of desperation. And an interesting link to this, actually, is some historians have found strikingly similar findings in medieval European witch killings. Everybody knows this image of people going around with torches and killing witches. So historians have looked at witch killings in Germany, present-day Germany, so in Central Europe. And in the case of Germany, the really bad years during the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries were the very cold years. Those were the years where crops didn't do very well. That was actually a much cooler period than our current period in terms of global climate. And they find that in very cold years, there's a strong correlation between temperature and the outbreak of witch killing in Central Europe. So there was a link between harvest production and weather with witch killing in Europe. Even in the US case, everybody's familiar with the Salem witch trials, 1691. 1691 was the coldest year on record in North America. That was a very desperate economic year as well, and that was the year which sort of killings broke out in the colonies. Yeah. The data that exists, and I didn't collect it, we did go to the village government to try to collect the data. We made a very deliberate decision not to track down the households, because this is still a crime. I mentioned that, like, legally this is a crime, and there was a time in the past where the government of Tanzania cracked down. We didn't want to be going around having people think we were trying to prosecute them, or we would take the data to the authorities. I also wonder about the ethics of knowing that someone committed a major crime. Do we have an obligation to report it to the authority? It was a very complicated situation in this area, so we didn't go and ask them directly. But there are these anthropological accounts, like the quote I put up, of people that survived witch attacks. And the survivors of witch attacks, they can tell you what happened to them, and they were attacked by their kin, they were attacked by their relatives. And so that's where the evidence comes from. Plus, I think locally people have this knowledge that they know, maybe neighbors talk to neighbors and explain what happened. I think in some cases, and again, there's a bunch of anthropological accounts, in some cases, the households don't want to kill the old woman. They feel terrible about what's going on. They chase her away with machetes and they chase her. But she really can't come back unless she goes through one of these cleansing processes, because, if you're chasing her away and accusing her of being a witch, she's like a public enemy. I think that's the best way of thinking about it. They're like a threat to the village. That's how the local authorities see witches. They're a threat to the livelihoods of other people in the village. They can cause crops to fail and do all these things. So unless there's some intervention from a traditional healer, they have to live on their own. And of course, if they're a poor, illiterate, 65-year-old woman in an isolated part of rural Tanzania, they're not going to last very long. I'm not sure. A, I don't know if there are quotes like that. I'm not sure if they exist. I haven't seen them, but they may exist. B, I'm not even sure if people see it that way. I think some people may see it that way, but a lot of people would really have internalized the witchcraft belief strongly enough and be sort of hungry and desperate and angry enough that they would really internalize the belief that this person is a witch. And I think that's where, but that's, we're getting into sort of the limits of our understanding of the human psyche in some sense there. Okay, I also mentioned before that there have been child witch accusations. So in several countries, Congo, Angola, in wartime, there have been outbreaks of killings of children accused of being witches, very young children, 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds. So folks who really can't work. I mean, they're unproductive. In Congo, 10 years ago, that was already 5-6 years into their civil war. Millions of civilians had already died by that point. There weren't that many elderly people left at that point in Congo, given all the ravages of war. So maybe that's part of the explanation for why the targeting shifted to children. Okay. So here's a question: why elderly women and not men? It's so striking that it's almost always women who are attacked. And that brings us to our next clicker question. So here are just some thoughts, some possibilities. What's the most plausible reason, in your view, why women are targeted? A, is it because they're socially isolated? I mentioned traditional marriage customs where women move away from home, so they're kind of surrounded by their husband's relatives, but not their own. B, maybe they lack local political power. C, maybe they're the least productive group in the household. D, maybe elderly men are just physically stronger, greater upper body strength, so if you attack them, it's just going to be more of a fight. E, maybe there's multiple explanations that are important. Among the women who flee, they will all deny being witches. It isn't like, how to put it, there's traditional healers who could go turn to the dark side of the force kind of thing. It's not that. It's not like these were traditional healer women who are accused of using black magic. It's like these are people who no one knew had these powers, and now are starting to be accused. That's what the anthropologists say. Usually with machetes. They usually like hack them to death. That's the usual way. I think it varies. At least in the accounts that we have, I'm not sure if I have enough detail to say that. No, I know, right? It would have to be that they have that power. No, that's where it feels like the economic explanation just has to be part of the story. Okay, let's go through. Oops. Oh no. I did it twice. Click it again. Click it one more time. I pressed it twice. Just remember what you did. I'll take that question in a second. Let me go through the clicker, and then we'll go to both your guys' questions in a second. Okay, I think we read about that. So, okay. So a lot of you said C. They're the least productive group. A lot of you said E, multiple explanations, which is sort of my own take. Social isolation. So you guys, I think there's a lot of support for a lot of these. Okay, there were two hands. Michelle? So it's in our data, there were a few cases of people in their 30s and 40s. There were no very young people. There were a few people in their 30s and 40s, and a lot in their 50s, 60s, et cetera. So, it isn't like there were no examples. There were some examples. I showed you that statistic. 96% were females, those who were attacked. The one male I'm including as a witch killing was the husband of a woman who was accused, who was killed while she was killed trying to protect her because she was being attacked. But I'm still counting that as a witch killing. It's sort of part of this crime. So there were no men truly targeted. It was all women who were basically targeted. Yeah. Are there more female? There's definitely longer life expectancy for females here, as there is in every human population I know of. So. Yeah, that's a great explanation. And I didn't sort of put it here, but to the extent that women live longer, there's just more of them in their 60s who are unproductive, and so that could be part of the story here as well. That could be part of the story. Yeah. No, if you ask people that in this part of Tanzania and you say, why is it women? Like, no, men can be witches too. Men can use these powers for good or evil, just like there's traditional healers and men and women. And in the government data, there are some cases of men who were killed. So it isn't like it never happens, but they're disproportionately targeted. It's certainly, I didn't put it as one of the explanations here, but that's the stereotype of a witch here. The stereotype of a witch is an older woman. In that sense, it's very similar to the kind of Western European stereotype. This kind of socially isolated, maybe slightly odd older woman. I mean, someone mentioned disability before, and there is a kind of stereotype of, these, or there's a view, the NGOs that work on this, there's some women's groups that work on this, that actually claim that, maybe those women who have mental health issues, who act strangely, people say, wait, she's strange, she must be a witch. So that would clearly be a disability link. Both hands, both of you guys, go ahead. Yeah. See, that's where we drew the line in our data collection. So we collected the data and said, who was killed, tell me about their household, et cetera, and we never asked the follow-on question, oh, who killed them, by the way, because we didn't want to be seen as kind of going after them. So we made it clear, we're just going to ask about the crimes, we're not going to talk about the perpetrators, the perps. Sorry. Once I said it, I had to say perps. How often do I have a chance to say that word? So I think that's the issue. We drew the line there where we didn't want to be into law enforcement and stuff. Yeah. So it's Muchawi, and Uchawi is the word for witchcraft. And then there's a totally different word for healer, Muganga Yakenyeji, which means like traditional doctor. No, Muchawi is just Muchawi, it's just a witch. So there's no gendered aspect to it. But that's an interesting question, right? To the extent that if the word only existed for females, it would sort of structure people's thinking about it. But in this case, it's a gender-neutral word. Okay. So these are some explanations that we've kind of touched on. The social isolation we touched on. I do want to mention the political marginalization. There's a traditional elders council in Tanzanian villages. During the socialist period, they tried to dismantle all these elders councils and replace them with elected village councils. The village councils still exist, they're still elected, but in the 1980s, during the economic crisis of the 1980s, basically traditional elder groups reorganized, sort of as they started fighting back against the state to allow them to bring these traditional institutions back. These traditional elder councils are all male. And it's called Sungu-Sungu, and the Sungu-Sungu has a responsibility. Their kind of main responsibility is for public safety and order. They're almost like a little mini police force in the village. So they're actually, formally now, they've been kind of incorporated into the governance system as a subcommittee of the village council. So there is a kind of local government unit that's all male, responsible for village safety, and they definitely see fighting witchcraft as within their purview, let's say, within their responsibilities, yeah. So there is some local dispute resolution that the Sungu-Sungu can do. Any sort of serious crime is supposed to be sent along to the legal system, but local disputes are handled by the Sungu-Sungu, probably with the VEO, the village executive officer. So, yeah. So it's a little different. So upon independence in Tanzania in 1960, the government abolished all chiefs. That was not the case in Nigeria. In Nigeria, there's still chiefs, as in most parts of West Africa, and they're kind of like the pinnacle of this traditional governance structure. In Tanzania, they banned chiefs, and even when the Sungu-Sungu was reconstituted, they don't have chiefs, per se. So it's a little bit of a different structure, and these guys, as I mentioned, were incorporated into the elected structure. So it's a little different. There isn't, like, in many parts of West Africa, there are truly these parallel systems, traditional authority, and then sort of legal authority from the central government, but here they kind of melded in a certain way. So it's a different system. Okay, physical strength, and I think you guys have mentioned 2 or 3 other interesting ones. What are some possible solutions? We've already mentioned finance, right? And we've already mentioned this case in southern Tanzania, where if only in these bad periods, you could have some insurance. It's a bad year, I need cash today, then maybe households wouldn't go after these old women. They weren't so desperate. So some sort of formal insurance, crop insurance, rainfall insurance could be really useful here. A couple of other possibilities. Better savings mechanisms could matter. So even if I don't get an outsider to insure me, if only I could store my grain or save my money better from year to year, then maybe I'd be able to self-insure. I'd be able to eat my own crop across the bad years. Now, there are limitations to that, because if I have 2 or 3 bad years in a row, I'd probably run out of grain no matter what. So that's probably a partial solution. There's another interesting possibility, which is some sort of pension, some sort of old age pension for women or for women and men. This is a setting where there is no social security. There is no national social security system. That's not quite right. There is a national social security system in Tanzania, but only for people that work in the formal sector. You have to have worked in the formal sector, paid in through a salary job during your career, and then you get a pension from the government. If you're in agriculture, you're in a rural area, you don't have a salary job, you're outside the system. The system doesn't exist for you. So one idea would be to make sure every elderly person gets some amount of cash transfer every month, so that they don't become desperately poor. There is a precedent for that. South Africa, in the mid-90s, introduced a very generous elderly cash transfer program, where everybody over age 60, I think, males and females, gets cash. Now, Tanzania is a lot poorer than South Africa. They don't necessarily have the funding for this, but not only would that help with witchcraft beliefs, it would be a very humane and fair thing to do. In countries without Social Security type systems, the poverty rate among the elderly is typically the highest of any age group. That's true in many countries. That was true in the US before Social Security. Today, we're used to hearing that children had the highest poverty rate. Before Social Security, the elderly had the highest poverty rate. So there's a very strong, redistributive potential purpose for that. What are some other solutions you could think of to this problem of witch killing beyond these sort of financial or economic mechanisms? What else could you think of, Martin? So maybe sort of weaken the witchcraft belief somehow? Okay, that could be one, yeah. Yeah, so if people are richer or they have better drought-resistant crops, then they won't have those big economic shocks in a bad year in the first place. Better irrigation systems. So that would be very similar in saying, we're going to bring in irrigation to sort of boost productivity, and irrigation may be particularly useful in drought years because maybe you have some sort of area with stored water that you could use in that period. Of course, the other solution would be to crack down legally again, and it didn't work out well before, but maybe in the future it would. Maybe if the government did it right and they set the stage for it, legal enforcement could help. Now, what I'm going to talk about next time, what Marshall Burke is going to talk about in his lecture, has to do with the fact that this kind of very violent and scary reaction to extreme climate is something that's probably not going to go away in the next few decades. If anything, with climate change and global warming and more extreme weather patterns, we may see more and more of this kind of extreme volatility, extreme droughts and flooding, with all kinds of consequences. So the goal of my next lecture is to talk about a broader type of violence, not witch killing, it's a very localized thing in Tanzania, but how extreme weather shocks and economic shocks lead to society-wide violence in the form of civil war. So that's going to be the focus next time. And in the back of our mind is this issue of what's going to happen to Africa with climate change. What's going to happen to economic conditions? What's going to happen to political conditions? What's going to happen to violence? And that's really the focus of that TED Talk that I pointed you guys toward. And I do recommend looking at it before the next lecture just because it'll kind of frame a lot of the discussion. So yeah, let me leave it off there and have a great spring break.